If you hear cheering, it's from millions of kids across the state celebrating the end of the school year. But some school districts are not cheering over the money that state lawmakers just voted on. We'll take a look at school funding, plus what last-minute deals are happening to fix our roads. Also coming up tonight, a big mistake at Detroit Public Schools could put preschool in jeopardy for many students. Plus more money for the grand bargain from the Detroit Three. A look at the power of the Tea Party in Michigan and how this week's defeat of the House leader may spill over into a congressional race here in the UP. And we'll explain why it is finally summer on the Great Lakes. But we do start tonight with the latest from Lansing on funding for schools, cities, and roads. Let's get to it with Nolan Finley, the editorial page editor of the Detroit News, and Stephen Henderson, the editorial page editor of the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's always good to see you, especially when we're talking about the budget and what's happening in Lansing. It was funny.
Oh, that's exciting stuff.
Well, it is exciting stuff because
Baseball.
it's where we put our money and where is it going to go and what's it going to do for us. So when we came in and we started talking about this, it was funny, Nolan, you said to Stephen, all right, what's going to happen with these roads? And so I'm going to ask you guys, where are we? They were at a marathon session on Wednesday night. Can this deal get done? And we do have to throw out the caveat that we do tape a little bit earlier on in the day.
Well, hopefully by now they've done something, but it certainly didn't look like it leading up to that. Last night was just a dismal failure. They didn't even do the things everybody thought would be easy to do, like raise the fee for overweight trucks and end some of the carve-outs on registration fees just to gain the little money. They didn't even do that. I mean, they didn't come close to passing a meaningful transportation bill.
Is anything in this really easy, though, Stephen?
Well, it should be. The math here is simple. You pay now to take care of the roads, or you pay way more later to repair them and to fix your car when you're running over these potholes. This is not a complex argument. The governor has been making it very simple for almost 3 years now, and the legislature just doesn't get it. I actually think
Steve,
people get it. I think the public gets it a lot more than the legislature does.
Why do you say no? Why don't you think the public gets it?
That's not true. I think one of the things that has these lawmakers wary is that the public doesn't get it yet, even though the roads are just absolutely horrible. And even if you can't possibly imagine going through another winter of this, our polling just a couple of weeks ago showed that roads were like the #1 issue for people, but there was absolutely no support for raising them. Our pollster did focus groups, and people told them, we're already paying enough, you're just not using our money right. And you hear that over and over again, and I don't think the advocates for more road funding, including the governor, have made their case to the Michigan people.
So no support for a raise in the sales tax for money, or for any tax whatsoever?
Well, and that's what you're seeing. Believe me, if the people are out there clamoring, fix our roads, we'll pay for it, these guys would be voting
Well, it's also about the way. I mean, it gets to some degree to the way that the districts in the House and the Senate have been gerrymandered. You have these ultra conservative districts that have been carved out where you're right, that there isn't support for more revenue, and that makes it really tough for members of the GOP caucus to vote for.
But last night you didn't get Democrat votes either, Steve.
Well, the Democrats are holding out for something different, though.
Well, they're wanting a bargain for this, for that, for that.
But that's different.
You didn't even get a majority of the Democrat votes for that.
Well, because they won't give them anything.
Okay, I think it was interesting that you wrote.
It shouldn't be, if the roads need fixing, and if that's what leadership's about, this shouldn't be a bargaining chip. We should do what's right for Michigan.
Oh, but isn't that part of politics, so that there has to be some kind of bargaining chip somewhere
around the line? Sure, but don't criticize the Republicans for not going along.
I'm criticizing
the Democrats sitting on their hands.
Well, what I'm criticizing the Republicans for is having drawn the silly maps in the first place.
All right, let's get beyond that, because we have to deal with what those maps are right now.
There's no support amongst the Michigan taxpayers.
The Michigan Chambers
to
poll,
raise their taxes.
The Michigan Chambers poll back in 4 or 5 weeks ago showed 56% of people said raise money for roads, raise taxes for roads.
What would you expect the Chamber poll to come out, Steve?
All right.
The Michigan Chamber?
Hang on one second. I want to bring up something before we leave the topic of roads, but maybe we never will leave the topic of roads here today. That you wrote in the paper this week that if they don't get a deal, these lawmakers should go home for summer and should never come back. Shouldn't come back in the fall.
This is one of the most basic functions of government. It's infrastructure, taking care of the roads and things like that. It's infuriating that we've been having this argument, not just for 3 years, mind you, because the governor was, the first person to really bring up an idea as to how to pay for it. But we've been talking about this for almost a decade, and we've known for almost a decade that we need $1 billion to $1.5 billion more every year to take care of the roads. This is not calculus. This is simple addition. I mean, there should not be this kind of debate going on endlessly about something like this. At some point, you gotta act, and if they don't act now, I'm not sure what will inspire them to.
At the very least, they should put it on the ballot and let the people decide what they want to do. Give them a couple of choices.
See, I think that's
Well,
cowardly.
Of course it is, but it's not getting done any other way.
You also lose time too. You also are through another construction
lose the
season.
time
and-
anyway.
Very important. Now they could divert some money, some other money to do the work that needs to be done this summer, but nothing on the order of a comprehensive bill. But if they're not willing to pass it themselves, at least put it on the ballot in November and let folks decide how they want to pay for the roads.
All right, another long night, you think? Or, I mean,
Yeah, maybe. They should stay. I mean, out of just courtesy to those of us, rattling our teeth on the roads, they ought to stay as long as they can to try to get something done. But I'm not terribly optimistic that it's going to happen.
all right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the funding for schools. School's out in my district tomorrow, so kids are, they're doing backflips, getting ready for summertime. I'm very happy to have the kids home all summer long. But let's talk about some of the per pupil funding that was put through a range between $50 to $175 per pupil, and some of the poorest districts are getting $125, but some of the larger districts are not happy with this $50 more allotment because they thought that they were going to get more.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the situation we've been wrestling with since Proposal A was passed. There is unequal funding in terms of resources per district, and it's getting harder and harder to justify. And as hard as this is to swallow for the affluent districts, you've got to catch up these poor districts.
And the reality is the revenue projections were not quite on point.
Well, it wasn't as much work with, but overall there's a 4% increase in education, K-12 education spending. That's not bad, and every district gets its increase in retirement costs taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, I think this gets to a much bigger question that, like Nolan said, has been hanging around since Proposal A, and frankly before. I mean, things were not equal before Proposal A. Proposal A made some steps toward that, but we still have a big discussion to have about how to finance schools and how to do it more fairly in this state, and also to do it with a better revenue stream. I mean, I think things have changed so much since we passed Proposal A. It's time to sort of revisit the question of how we how we want to fund schools, and we do have to fund them better than we have been.
Well, I'm not sure that equitable funding is going to produce equitable outcomes, but I mean, you look at Highland Park where they're spending almost more than anyone in Metro Detroit per pupil and getting some of the worst results. But there are some fairness issues, particularly among suburban districts, among neighboring districts, wide swings in how much money get. Many of the poor districts, urban districts, make up what they're not getting from the state and a lot more federal money. Yeah. So you've got to take the whole pool and look at it.
The federal money is targeted, and you can't just spend that on.
But it's paying
to go for a specific
it's
program.
Paying for something specific.
Before we leave budget talk, which I know that you love, Nolan, let's talk really quick about the boost for cities and their municipal revenue sharing. About what, 7%? Is that a good deal?
Yeah, it's going back the right direction. But there again, the system itself is broken. The whole system we came up with for revenue sharing.
But is this a good bump, though? Is this a good start?
It's a fine bump, and it's the first one in I don't know how many years. I mean, a very long time. It doesn't begin to make up the money that cities have lost, but it is sending us back in the right direction. Again, though, you're not going to fix this with a 7% bump, every year for the next 15 years.
Well, except that you also have, combined with that, improvement in home prices. So
it's helping.
They're going to catch up on their, you better believe your property taxes are going to be going up again. And they'll catch up on assessments. So you get this 7%, you get another 3% in additional property tax revenue. That's not a bad bump for 1 year.